Hey everyone, this is Damon with PixNub Software, and for this video I'm going to be discussing the 3 adjustments for adjusting your player spacing and row spacing inside of the Easy Team Builder multi-row version. Now I'm not actually in Easy Team Builder right now. I've got a screenshot of the user interface, and that's so I can easily just go back and forth between a finished image and the adjustments and explain what's going on. So the first one to talk about is the spacing between rows. Now this one's not too critical because it's really easy to move the rows after you're done, but I'll just show you here what that's doing. That's just setting the spacing, as it says, the spacing between rows. So it's setting your vertical spacing. So the range on this is 0.7 to 1.3. And that's actually in reference to the face height. It takes an average height of all the faces in the image when it does the face detection, and a value of 1 is that height. And so the default is 1.5. So it pushes the row down by an average of 1.5 head spaces. And that's going to vary too player to player because, some people are taller, unless you're doing face alignment, which I'll discuss in a minute. But it's just about 1.5 spaces down. Now I've got a couple of samples here that I've already done, and so actually where is these at? Okay, row spacing 1, here we go. So this is with the setting set to 1, and this is the setting at 2.5. It actually lets you go even below this. It lets you go down to 0.7 so you can really compress the rows, and it lets you go even more than this, up to 3.5. But so there's a pretty big range. But like I said, it's not too critical because it's really simple just to move these rows. Now when you're moving the rows, by the way, you want to make sure this auto select is unchecked, because if you accidentally have that checked on, even if you select your row, it's going to reselect when you click and auto select the player you're over. Alright, the next adjustments to talk about. Now these two are a little more critical to get right when you run it because they're a lot harder to readjust afterwards, and it's probably easier just to rerun if you don't get these right. Now the player scaling, I'm going to talk about this first, and the default value of 50, that attempts to put the people about shoulder to shoulder. Now I've got 2 different images I'll show here. So the first one is with a larger team, and the second one is with less number of players. Now these are both the default settings. So you notice how these players are physically larger in the image than when you have more players, and that's done automatically without you having to do any scaling adjustment. It's going to automatically fit the players on the template all the way up to 100 per row and 12 rows, so up to 1,200 people it will fit and scale, and with the value of 50 it puts them about shoulder to shoulder, and of course the more you have, the further it's going to have to scale them down to fit the template. So what this scaling value is actually for, it's for making additional scaling beyond what the default does. So for football players, as an example, with the shoulder pads, and plus football players are a little broader to begin with, a value of 50 may put them a little bit closer than you want, but there is a pretty large range of adjustment. So I'll show you with scaling of 0, it puts them a lot, not further apart, but it scales them down, so relatively speaking they're further apart, you get more gaps. So if you view, right, I'm going to have to switch this on top here. So it's kind of hard to see here, but let me zoom in. So you see with the different scaling values, they're still spaced the same amount. You see these faces still line up horizontally, but if you turn the scaling down, then it makes them physically smaller and adds more of a gap between them. And the same thing when you go up to 100 on the scaling, you see still the faces are the same distance apart, but with the scaling at 100, you get more overlap and they're physically larger. And the distance between the faces, it's going to base that on the number of images. And like I said, it's going to auto adjust to your template. So for the most part, you can usually use the defaults and that will work good regardless of the team size. But if you need to put a little more gap or a little less, then this is the adjustment you'll want to use. And with football players with shoulder pads, maybe somewhere around 40 to 45 is good. You really shouldn't need to ever take this all the way down to 0 or all the way up to 100. I built in quite a bit larger range of adjustment than you'll typically need. Okay, so the last one is the face and feet alignment. And so what that does, well, it's just what it says. It's how you snap a line. Let me find the defaults here. Okay, so by default that this value is set to 100. And 100 is pure feet alignment. 0 is pure face alignment. And you can kind of think of it as how much of the actual height difference do you want to show. So if the value is set to 100, you're going to show 100% of the actual height difference. You see they're all lined up by feet, and if we hide the different rows here, you can see each row is perfectly aligned by their feet, and you're seeing the actual height differences of the players. Now, if you wanted to, instead, if you wanted to align by face, if you set that value to 0, and again, that's this value in the face feet alignment, if you set that to 0, you can see now the faces are all lined up vertically. Now, if you have some players with taller hair, they may stick up a little bit more, but the center of their faces are all going to line up. You see now their feet don't line up. So if you have graphics to cover this, a lot of times it's a little bit cleaner of a look to line them by face and not by feet. But you can also go somewhere in between. So for this example, I have set this number to 50. And you can think of that as you're showing 50% of the actual height difference. So if you look at the shortest player on the right, you see their feet are a little bit above the other players. And then also the head is a little bit below. It's exactly halfway in between face and feet alignment. And if you had set this to 75 as an example, then this would be a little bit lower, so you'd see a little more of that height difference and the feet wouldn't quite line up. So you can play with that adjustment and just fine tune that to whatever looks best for your specific images. And then of course you could always move the players around as needed as well. And if you want to move the players around, I'll just show you real quick. The easiest way to do that is turn the auto select on, as I think I showed a little bit earlier. Oh, excuse me, I'm on the, let's undo that group. So normally you wouldn't have this extra group of screenshots in here, but you turn the auto select on, and then whichever player you click on, you're going to be able to move that player. So that's the easiest way just to line up your players. And you can also change the order here that they appear, and that's the overlap order. So if you do have any overlapping, you can control which ones are on front. And then there's one more thing I was planning to show. I'm trying to think of what it was. Oh yeah, okay, sorry. I was just trying to remember what else I was going to show here. So I also recommend turning the snap off. I'll see if I can get it to show what can happen with the snap on. So if the snap is on and you're trying to move players around, you see how it kind of skips and jumps into predefined locations because it's trying to line this up to other objects in your image or to the layer bounds. And so often you have a hard time getting that exactly where you want it. So I always turn that off when I'm moving the players around. You can just have more smooth and precise control of that. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and if you're interested at all in the Easy Team Builder plugin, please be sure to visit our website. That is pixnub.com.